Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed. Today, Brooke and I are just in a calm, loving state because we have back a guest that we both love and adore. And she has a lot of knowledge, a lot of information we're going to get through today because it is Mental Health Awareness Month.
Happy Mental Health Awareness Month, everyone.
We have back Dr. Brittany Mathews. Welcome back to Ivy Unleashed.
Thank you for having me again. I'm really glad to be here with you too.
Yeah, so we're pumped because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. The whole reason that we do this is the mind piece to what we do. Brooke and I focus on the mind, Ivy Unleashed, body, Move with Gold Ivy. And we have to focus on our mental health. We can't have enough reminders. We can't talk about this enough on ways to benefit how we feel, what thoughts we're having. And psychologists are angels on earth that hold space for us. You know, we talk about therapy all the time. BetterHelp's a partner of ours. And it's just something that we have to keep highlighting. We have to keep talking about the elephant in the room. And that is what we're saying to ourselves and how we're caring for our mental health. And so Dr. Brittany Mathews has created a business since we last spoke with her because she's so passionate about this. And so we want to talk about the importance of mental health awareness, and we want to talk about your business. If you would just share with us the name of it, what it is, your mission, all of that. We want to hear everything.
Thank you for that introduction. I have started a business this year. I started my own private psychology practice, and I'm serving adolescents and providing evidence-based treatment for anxiety and depression. And when I say adolescents, people often think maybe just like teens, like high schoolers, but it's actually a very wide age range. So puberty begins much earlier now than it did previously. So I'm starting to see kids as young as 10 years old and seeing young adults up into the age of 25, because that's kind of the completion of the adolescent period. So 10 to 25 is who the population that I'm speaking of when I say adolescents. And I chose to focus on anxiety and depression because of how prevalent they are in our youth population. The rates of anxiety and depression have increased in recent years, and suicide rates have increased. And so I feel like it's an area of need. And so that's where I'm choosing to focus my attention and my services. And that is what my business focuses on currently.
Awesome. What's the name of your business?
That's a great question. That's an important piece of information. Mindkind is the name of my business. I came up with a name because mindfulness practice is super important to me. And I like to work from that place and that framework within me when I'm working with clients and in my everyday life. And kind, because loving kindness is a meditation practice that I utilize. And it's a practice where you wish yourself and others love and kindness, happiness, health, peace, and ease. And it's an important practice to me. And so that's where the name of my business comes from. That's what I hope to emulate.
I love that. I mean, I think there's moments in every day that we're like, wow, I could be a little kinder to myself and to others, but it really starts with being kinder to ourselves. And even if you're not an adolescent listening to this episode, you're going to get value, right? You know, an adolescent, or just the tips that we're going to share today are going to help anyone. Being kinder to yourself. It's a good reminder for all of us.
Yeah, and I really want to jump into mindfulness. But before that, I just want to backtrack a second to say that the first episode Dr. Brittany Mathews was on was episode 25. She just touched on suicide rates, and I think it's really important to go back to that episode if you're wanting any type of information, language to use, to understand the importance of knowing it's okay and it's encouraged to talk about suicide and to help others, check in on others. And she gave actual language on what to say in those moments and how important it is. And so I want to plug that episode because it helped a lot of people. That episode flew off the charts because it's kind of like it's like a new thing to understand that we need to, like, we shouldn't hide from that conversation. So I just wanted to say that. Episode 25. And we want to get into mindfulness because this is a big word. We hear it all the time. We talk about being mindful, but just what mindfulness means and then how you help your patients, your clients incorporate that into their lives.
So there's a lot of different definitions of mindfulness, and mindfulness has a long history in Eastern traditions and is newer here in the West. The definition that I tend to go by is the one that was put forth by John Kabat-Zinn. He is a big pioneer. He's a Western scientist, and he brought a lot of mindfulness practice to the West, to the US, and he specifically developed mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is a program that is utilized in a lot of medical settings for people with chronic pain and other health conditions. And essentially, the definition of mindfulness that he puts forth is a moment-to-moment awareness of what's going on internally, our thoughts, our emotions, our bodily sensations, and paying attention to our surroundings. And doing that in a way that is gentle and accepting and kind without judgment.
That's a beast right there.
Like the without judgment.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, when you think about all of those components, there's a lot going on there. Trying to be aware moment to moment. So that's every moment being in the present moment, which is really challenging for us as human beings because our brains are so busy all of the time. They're constantly scanning the environment for threat, thinking about the future, worrying about the future, perseverating on the past and things that have already happened to us. They're just kind of caught up in our own like imaginary world and the stories that we're telling us. So I think the majority of the time, most of us are not aware in the present moment. So it's really challenging to go from moment to moment, being aware of the present moment, and then to pay attention to all of those things internally, the thoughts, the emotions, the physical sensations, and your direct surroundings, and really being open to all of that, open to what's happening and accepting it. That means like accepting if you're feeling terrible, like if you have pain or if you've been struggling with an illness, accepting that that's what your body is feeling right now, accepting if you have like intense anger or intense fear, being willing to notice that and accept it and kind of move forward with that. Those are really challenging things to do. And so there is a lot going on when you are talking about the definition of mindfulness and particularly practicing mindfulness.
I think about being in the here and the now. Like that is the goal. That's the point the acceptance, yes, but to accept it, you have to come in the moment. So how do you help your clients accept it, but not stay stuck? Because I think that's something that we talk a lot about when it comes to therapy and revisiting these past wounds and this inner child, right? Like that can kind of go on repeat of, all right, I'm feeling it and I'm still staying here instead of moving past it.
It's a great question, and it is really challenging. I think a part of that is allowing yourself to fully experience what you're experiencing in that moment. And sometimes when we can do that, when we can stop fighting against it or trying to avoid it or push it away, when we can fully see it and accept it, it decreases, it lessens. The intensity of that emotion or the painfulness of whatever it is that you're experiencing actually decreases. And then once you fully accept it, it allows you to then move forward, to move past it, or to take the next step to say like, okay, this is where I am right now in my present life. You know, this is what happened to me in the past. And then what can I do moving forward? Or, you know, what are my values? What's important to me? And then what do I want to do in order to live my life according to those values or to move towards where I want to be in my life?
Oh, I keep thinking about, you know, if I was sitting on your couch and we're getting me mindful of my body and I were to feel a bunch of anger about something that happened in the past and just feeling it. Now I'm thinking, okay, I'm there. I'm allowing myself to feel it. What part of that is like ownership that I can soothe, that I can self-soothe and I can move forward versus I need to address this with my past relationship, or I need to address this with a parent or a sibling or a whatever, fill in the blank, whoever has done me wrong or I feel like helps create this anger or this resentment or whatever it might be. So how do you balance that, taking ownership of moving forward and knowing that you're in charge of your own reality versus like, I gotta talk to what created this anger in the first place.
So I think when I say like acceptance or like thinking about acceptance of that anger, it's really like sitting with that feeling while you're sitting on the couch and feeling it. Like, what does that feel like in your body? Describe the physical sensations of that. I'm thinking about when I felt angry, there can be like tingling, there's heat that can go through your body. There's a sense of like expansion and like wanting to explode. So really sitting and feeling all of those physical sensations of the emotion and being aware and reminding yourself that a typical emotion in your body doesn't last more than a few seconds. Typically, it will subside and you can move on. What tends to make emotions continue to last longer is our thoughts. We continue to think about those things that made us angry and we keep kind of feeding the emotion. So just sitting with that emotion, accepting that it's here. And then I think the other piece of it that you're talking about is whether to like accept that this situation happened and move on with your life, like move forward versus accepting that the situation happened and addressing it with that person if somebody harmed you. So I think that's where you come to after you've dealt with that emotion that's inside of you and that intensity and coming to the place of like what are your values? What is important to you in your life and where do you want to go? And then deciding what steps need to happen. So for some people that may be, talking with a person that's harmed them and addressing the situation, getting more information or offering forgiveness or whatever it may be. And for other people that may be unnecessary. They may not need to talk with that person. And then they can just say like, okay, that is something that happened and it caused me a lot of hurt or a lot of anger. And it's not something that I want to take over or own my life anymore. And these are the things that I want to focus on. And then that can indicate what the next step is for that person.
I love that too, because it could be different too in that moment versus 5 years from now. You could change your mind and be like, you know what? I thought I might have closure. I just wasn't quite ready to address it with the person. Or I thought I needed to, and I actually don't. I'm good. I think it's that as you evolve and as you do more healing, you might change your mind. You might have different needs. And so I think it's important to note that there's not like a right way to do this either.
It's different for everyone. But I think what is important for all of us is the stillness piece, right? The slowing down, turning inward, having that time during your day where you are turning inward and asking yourself that check-in. How am I doing? What do I need? Am I living in alignment? Living in my values? And a big piece of that is meditation, which you speak so fondly of, and we love meditation too. Will you kind of touch on that and how mindfulness and meditation go hand in hand?
And I love that you use the word stillness. I think that's such a great word. And it's something that is not very common in our American society and not highly valued either. I think that there can be some judgment around people being still. And it is so important because if we don't slow down a little bit and be still and check in with ourselves, then we're functioning on autopilot and not aware of what we're doing or thinking or feeling or our own actions as well. And there can be, things that come from that we wouldn't necessarily want. So in terms of meditation, meditation is a practice. So it's this idea of actually sitting down, not doing anything except for sitting, and practicing different techniques. So mindfulness is one technique that can be practiced during meditation, but there's hundreds of different types of meditations that someone can do. And the idea is that through meditation, a practice where you're doing this on a daily basis, it's like building a muscle, like a physical muscle. Like the more reps you get in, the more you're working that and exercising that muscle, the stronger that it gets. The same idea with our brains, where the more that we are practicing these techniques through meditation, doing that on a daily basis, the stronger those neural connections will be in our brain. And hopefully it will yield some positive impacts in our life.
I love that. And I know that you are a meditator. You've had this as a practice on all different parts of the planet. And so I want to talk about your journey because I think it's intriguing to have a psychologist talk about how they weave it in. Like, when are you doing it? How long are you doing it? What does this look like? So for you personally with your meditation practice, because I know it's evolved just being your friend, what does that look like for you, and what benefits have you seen personally?
I would say that it has evolved since I first started. I think I knew about meditation and mindfulness for a very long time and would kind of dabble and did it here and there, but I wasn't a very consistent practitioner until 2020 when the pandemic started, and was home, and I have young children, and just started to need more peace in my day and started to actually do that on a daily basis. And so I started doing it on my own at home with a couple of apps. There's a great app called the Healthy Minds app that was developed by Dr. Richard Davidson out of UW-Madison. And he's done a lot of the research on the effects of meditation and mindfulness. And so that's an app that he has helped develop. So I started with that. And I've used different things over the course of the years, Insight Timer. I love yoga as well. So I've gone to lots of different yoga classes, and oftentimes it's incorporated through yoga. There's another app that's put out by, it's the Plum Village app, which is a monastery in France that's put together by Buddhist Zen practitioners. And so they have some really great audio to practice meditation. And as I've gotten better at it and have learned more, I oftentimes will just sit and set a timer on my watch for anywhere from 5 minutes to 30 minutes, typically, depending on how much time I have in the morning. And I try to just sit and be quiet and still and listen to my breathing and feel the sensations in my body and listen, take in all of the sensory information that's coming to me from my ears and my eyes and my skin, and just sit and practice that each morning. So I typically try to get up before my children do to do this. It doesn't work out every day, but it's an aspiration that I have. And so, like I said, even if I have 5 minutes, I'll try to do 5 minutes in the morning. And then I've been trying to do 5 minutes before bedtime as well lately, just to kind of unwind and get my mind to calm down and quiet down at the end of the night and get ready for sleep.
This is something that, so we always do a quarterly challenge with our Move members, and this is something that's in the habit tracker, and this is like the number one thing people really struggle with. Like you said, it's not something that's promoted in our culture to sit and be still and be quiet. And so I also want to normalize that it's a challenging thing. Like you said, it's a practice, and as you're doing it, a million thoughts fly through your mind because you're used to going at that rate and that speed, and our brains just have a lot of things going on, and we take on a lot. And so how do you kind of pitch this to someone, like, to get this started, to get this practice rolling? Talk us through what that could look like as, like, you're sitting there. Is this just going to be, oh, I'm having epiphanies? Or is it like the monkey mind? Like, how do you explain this maybe to an adolescent or someone on what might happen when you get started and how it can kind of evolve?
No, it's a great question. I usually, if I'm working with adolescents and just starting this, I'll just start with 1 minute. We will do 1 minute of mindfulness and just practice it. And it is really challenging to like sit when you haven't done it before. It's a new concept. It's like totally different than the day to day of like rush, rush, rush. These are all the things I need to do, or these are all the things I'm thinking about, to actually sit and just be still and notice what's going on within yourself. It's really challenging. So I usually start with 1 minute with adolescents. And at the end, we typically try to talk about like, what was that experience like? So oftentimes I think that people do get a sense of calm, even from just 1 minute, like a sense of like, just felt like I could take a breath, or a sense of ease, even after that first minute. And at the same time, I think the majority of feedback that I've had from adolescents is also that they've got like all of the monkey mind going on, like all of the thoughts that are coming in. And, you know, that is just how our brains work. The beautiful thing about practicing mindfulness is you become more aware of those thoughts happening, because they are happening all the time. There are lots and lots of people on this earth who have no awareness that those are even like thoughts that they're experiencing. It's just the way that they think that the world is. But really, that's kind of what's happening in our own mind. And so we start really small. And I think, Andrea, you brought up a great point that sometimes people have this expectation with mindfulness or sitting for meditation that they shouldn't have any thoughts going through their brain. And that's just not realistic, especially for beginning practitioners. And even for me, I've been practicing for like 4 years consistently now. And every time I sit down, I always have thoughts that are popping in, even when I'm trying really hard to just focus on the present moment. And the idea is that we begin to change our relationship with our thoughts. They're going to still be there. We can't completely stop thinking, but you can begin to be aware of them. And then you can also choose to kind of see them, observe them as like a cloud moving by in the sky. It's not something that you have to become very attached to or like become like in the cloud. So you're experiencing that thought as your full experience. You can kind of observe that this is what your brain is doing and then just kind of like let it go. And doing that non-judgmentally is really important too, because I think that's something that people struggle with when they start practicing mindfulness or a meditation practice, is feeling like they're not doing it right or it needs to be a certain way, and then kind of beating themselves up if they're having thoughts and then like, oh, I'm thinking again, and, kind of catching themselves and berating themselves in their minds. So that's where the non-judgmental piece comes in, kind of being gentle with yourself and just saying like, yep, I'm thinking again, and let that go. Or sometimes even thanking yourself. Like for me, a lot of times thoughts that are popping in are like planning thoughts, like for my day, like I need to do this or I need to do that, or, kind of stuff like that. And sometimes I'll just like thank myself, like, thank you, like you're trying to take care of everything. And like, this is a time where you don't have to do that, for 5 minutes, you just sit and that stuff will be there afterwards.
Yeah, I like that idea of the relationship with your thoughts. Because like you said, we can't control what thoughts come in. They're involuntary, just like our heart beats, right? Our mind is pumping out these thoughts. And what type of thoughts are you having? Because ultimately, if you're having happy, positive thoughts, you're going to be happy and positive. If you're having thoughts of, I shouldn't do this, I can't do this, I'm not good enough, well, that's going to manifest in your body as illness. And, our thoughts, they control so much. And so getting in that quiet time, that stillness to even become aware of what thoughts am I having, and then noticing, okay, this thought is my inner critic, this thought of judgment, and nope, I don't want to think this way. Picking a different thought, switching it, and then like you said, that cloud, like that visualization of what thought comes in, do I want to give it attention or not? Because that's my control. But until you take that time to sit in stillness, I think that's such a beautiful awakening that we have of, okay, what's going on in my head that's programmed? Like it's automatic, these thoughts for so long, and voices that aren't ours, that our parents may be implanted, or TV or things we've listened to, taking back control of how do I want to be thinking? How do I want my thoughts to serve me? As you're speaking, Dr. Mathews, that's what I hear is we have the ability to think thoughts that serve us well.
Yeah. And at a scientific, like biological level, if you were to get this meditation practice in place and it starts to become something that's part of what you do, and you do take this time for stillness, like what benefits do you get from meditation? Like what is happening in our bodies?
From the scientific research, and really the research is relatively new. It wasn't until maybe like the 60s or 70s that the scientific community really started looking at meditation and like what it's doing to our brains. Meditation has been a practice for thousands of years among different cultures. But in our American society and Westernized society, we've started to look at it more scientifically in the past several decades. And so generally speaking, there have been a few reviews of research, so where they take lots of different specific studies that have been done and kind of look at them in combination to say like overall, what is the research telling us about mindfulness or meditation? And mindfulness-based interventions generally do produce a greater sense of ease and calm in the people who are practicing, reduce stress. There's also great effects on reducing anxiety and depression. There's a ton of research that's been done with people who have chronic pain in the medical community, or people who are struggling. This can be really effective for managing that. And I think, anecdotally, it's another huge impact that it's had on my life and a benefit I think it can have for everybody is it just brings you more to your present moment, to what is actually happening in your life. It allows you to see more beauty around you, paying attention to like what's happening outside in nature, or paying attention to the relationships that you have in your life, or like all of the wonderful little things that happen throughout your day. It allows you to notice those things and appreciate those things more, and just like live more fully, and I think live more happily too. Because our brains do have this tendency to focus on the negative, to see the things in our life that we don't like, or to feel like it shouldn't be this way, or why is this happening to me, or that feeling of like discomfort with things. But really there are so many beautiful things happening in our lives in every day, in every moment. And practicing mindfulness allows us to be more aware of those things and to notice them.
Yeah. I feel that sense of gratitude too. And I think that as it's something that's newer, it's not newer, but it is newer to have more people talking about it.
Yeah, it's more socially acceptable. Like that's a new thing.
And so it's something we need to talk about more, because it needs to become sexier. It needs to be like romanticize this time more, because it will bring more joy, more wonder, more like excitement into your life, to be like, wow, this is a little bit like with the way that I feel about God and in my family. But when my son is struggling, or my daughters are struggling with negative thought patterns, I'll say, just ask for a sign, or just start to notice. And by doing that, by just coming back and like the awareness, okay, I'm going to look for a sign from God that everything's going to be okay, or that I'm not dumb, or I'm not bad at this, or whatever. You'll start to see what you're looking for. And so it's this gratitude too that you're talking about, where the more that you're thankful for the thought, even if it's negative, it's coming by. It's like, okay, thank you. That's been on my mind a lot, and now I'm aware of it. And how's it making me feel in my body? Thank you for this awareness, self, for sitting here, taking this time. Like, you can be more grateful for what your body and brain like together are capable of. It's insane. And I feel like we're just scratching the surface of it.
I also think like there's no coincidence that we are more busier and rushed and go and sicker than ever, right? Like they're so correlated. So if you are dealing with gut issues or headaches or energy issues, anything physically related, by you calming your nervous system, you're positively impacting your physical health. And so it is all interconnected. And, I think back to throughout my journey, when I started seeing the research and hearing these stories of people who were like, I literally just slowed down and I started meditating and I started focusing on my breath, and all of these things improved. Like, yes, anxiety, depression, they're higher than ever, the rates of them. But so are all of these other health issues and concerns. And if we come back and think about, okay, how are our mind and our body connected? Like, there's reasons that people are talking about this, us. And there's also reasons that it's not socially acceptable, because it's free. You're medicating yourself without taking a substance. Like, you are your own medicine. Just saying.
Girl.
Just saying. And with that, I'm curious, other than meditation, like what are some things that you give to your clients that people listening can start using to help with their mental health?
So I think there's one more thing I would just say about like mindfulness. We talked a little bit about sitting meditation, and I think that's one way to do it. And I think the other way is just by bringing awareness to your everyday activities. And I think the one beautiful way to practice this is to take an activity in your day that's kind of mundane, that you have to do, that is boring.
Dishes, laundry.
Exactly. Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Cleaning the toilet.
Example.
So exciting for me.
Take that time to use that time to practice mindfulness. So to really, the dishes is a great example, Andrea. I use that as well when I'm doing dishes, to like really mindfully think about like when you're washing a dish, doing it carefully, doing it with love, paying attention to your breathing and how your body is feeling while doing it. You can take that time to practice gratitude, to say like, I'm so grateful that I have this dish because that means that I have something to eat food off of. And I'm so grateful that I have food. There are people in the world who don't have food right now. It kind of brings that in as well. And the other thing that sometimes I'll do is kind of bring in some interconnectedness to like think even broader, because one other thing that's kind of at epidemic levels in our American society is loneliness. So people feeling really disconnected from other people and feeling very, very lonely. And truly, we are all interconnected. Nobody is alone. But I think that the way that we think about our lives or the way that we're kind of going about things, we forget that. And so sometimes just reminding ourselves of all of the ways in which our lives are impacted by other people and that we're helping each other as a society can be really helpful. So coming back to the dishes, one way I think about that is I think about, with our food, like who grew this food? Who picked this food? Who packaged this food? Thinking about all the people who work at the grocery store who have like put things on the shelves and brought them to the car or helped you check out, and all of the people involved in that process of getting food to your table so that your family has food to eat and then you can wash this dish afterwards. I know that's really like intense, but it is a good reminder of that we're not alone, that we are all very interconnected and reliant upon each other. And that can be really helpful to practice as well.
Especially this day and age when it's not like, oh, I know he gathered it out in the field right outside my door. It's like, no, this was a system to get it here. It was probably on a truck somewhere, and it is a lot of people. I think that's great. And I'm so happy that you work with adolescents, because I think developing those gratitude practices at such a young age is so beneficial because, with technology and everything, it's just different. It's easier to like not even think about those things.
And to notice your thoughts. Like, it's so easy when you're doing the dishes, like, oh, I don't want to do these freaking dishes. I hate the dishes. Or like, wow, I'm so grateful that I have the ability to be standing here and feeling calm in my body. Just noticing those thoughts you have, how different each of them make you feel.
Also, who invented the dishwasher? Thank you. Thank you, dishwasher inventor. Gratitude for him or her. I love it. Okay, and so just to circle back too, because I know we've talked about kind of being present, but I think sometimes people want to move, right? We've got attention disorders. We like to be active. Like I was just on vacation with my husband's family. Nobody can sit. So if you find it very challenging to sit still, but you want to benefit your mental health in maybe some other ways that aren't so still, what do you suggest people do?
Well, there's also walking meditation, but that's also very, very slow and being mindful of your walking. I think it's important to note too that like mindfulness is not a cure-all. Like it's not going to be the solution for every person or every problem. It is a tool, one of many that people can have in their toolbox to take care of their mental health or to address a mental health struggle that they're having. There are obviously many other tools. Movement is an excellent one to reference. So for, some people, it doesn't work for them. They just can't sit still, or not yet, maybe in this point in their life, maybe like 5 years down the road, they'll be able to do that better. But absolutely exercise and movement. I mean, any way that people can get that is incredibly helpful for your body physically and mentally. I know you guys are huge proponents of that. So your listeners can listen to almost any episode of yours and you're going to reference that probably. The other things I always think about with mental health is kind of taking care of the basics first before we move into, evidence-based treatments for depression or anxiety. I want to make sure that everybody is covering the basics of adequate nutrition, getting enough sleep, and getting movement. So those are the three that I want, everybody that I'm working with, and three that I really personally make sure that I am thinking about every day to take care of my own mental health. So making sure that you are getting enough good sleep and have good hygiene around your sleep habits. Making sure that you're eating foods that are actually giving your body the nutrients that they need, particularly, all of these nutrients that come from fruits and vegetables that your brain really needs to function well. That's super important in mental health. And movement, of course. it helps in so many things, physically and mentally. I feel like there's so much to be said about movement, and that could be anything. I think for me, when I'm working with adolescents, it doesn't have to be going to the gym. It doesn't have to be running. Sometimes people have these preconceived notions of what exercise is or what it has to be. Just finding something that works for them, that they enjoy, that they're actually going to do on a daily basis, and getting moving.
Yeah, I think sometimes saying movement versus exercise is more like graspable.
I keep thinking about how, yeah, that's a word. It's a great word. Graspable. It's hard to say. But I keep thinking about all of these things that we're going to talk about. And we keep talking about and we keep hitting home with mental health. We all know most of this stuff. Like there's got to be some benefits around it, but it's the actually implementing it and creating a practice and creating this system in your environment where I've never meditated before. What could that look like? Where would I sit? It's starting to actually think about, okay, I want to be more active outside. When would it be? Who will I be with? What time of day will it be? And so I think there's this, it's great to know all these things, but I really want to encourage the listeners to think, okay, yeah, you might have heard this before that meditation's good, but where would you sit in your house? Would you be in your house? Would you want to go somewhere else? Could you ask someone you live with, hey, I'd really like this time where I can't ask for silence in my house, but could you take the kids upstairs while I go to the basement or, whatever it might be. And so I want to encourage everybody to really start thinking about maybe some messy action with something that has helped you in the past, or you want to try something new and start to implement it. And if you feel like that is overwhelming and too much, this is where I think the value of a therapist comes in, where it's having someone hold your hand, give you ideas, talk through what this could look like, encourage you to talk to people that you might feel like, this is weird. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Is my husband going to be okay with me talking about meditating or leaving the 3 kids with him so I can go for a walk or whatever it might be? And then having the accountability of coming back to your therapist and reporting back. Like, I hardly did any of that, but you holding their hand to say, good job. What did we do well? And how did this serve you? And how can we move forward? And so I just want to hit that home that sometimes we know what's good for us, but we need to think about what that's going to look like. And sometimes that feels like too much. And so for you, when you think about your clients and people coming to you and sitting with you, the value of a therapist, I know we talk about this a lot, but can you just talk to people about what you've seen, how it benefits people, maybe whether they're an adolescent or a full-blown adult, how therapy has changed people's lives that you know, or you personally?
Yeah, I think in some ways, like scheduling a therapy session and actually committing to therapy is a bit like sitting for meditation, where you set aside that time for you, and you're actually going to go and be with yourself and the therapist, but really to set aside that time to work on things, whatever that may be. Working with adolescents, I've seen a wide variety of adolescents, and sometimes they're the ones who want to come into therapy because they're really struggling and they really need to talk about something, or they really need support, and that's wonderful. Other times they have no interest, absolutely do not want to talk. I've sat in a session with somebody before and they've pretty much said nothing for 50 minutes. And it's their parent who's like forcing them to come in, essentially. But I think just having that time set aside can be so valuable because it shows commitment to working on whatever it is that's going on inside of themselves. It's also, like you said, Andrea, it's just like a wonderful space to go to be heard. So that person, the psychologist or the therapist, is there just to listen to you and to your perspective, your emotions, your thoughts. They're just there to provide a space for you to express all of those things, and they're there to hold that. It's also a wonderful way to get some feedback from somebody. So for somebody who has mental health training, who can provide some psychoeducation, so can provide you with more information about what is going on, with all of the experiences that you're describing. They can say, like, actually, that is really consistent with anxiety that people experience. And so they can help you kind of begin to conceptualize and put together a picture of like what it is that you're experiencing, and help you feel less alone in that, kind of normalize that, or give you more information to better understand what you're experiencing. And sometimes too, providing some honest feedback too. Therapy can be a wonderful place to go and speak to somebody and actually get some honest feedback from somebody that you need in order for you to like learn and grow and be able to practice new things in your life. For adolescents, I think a lot of times, family, like parent-teen conflict is very prevalent. It's just part of normal adolescence. It's one of the developmental milestones is for adolescents to separate and to move away from their parent. And that can create some really challenging dynamics. It can be very hard for the parent. It can be very hard for the teen. And oftentimes it creates difficulties in that relationship. So when an adolescent or a parent comes into therapy, it can be really effective to have a third person there, somebody who's kind of non-biased, to listen to both perspectives, to help those two or more people be able to use effective communication techniques. So not just screaming at each other or criticizing or saying you do this all the time, but actually to be able to put in some effective communication strategies where each person can begin to more calmly communicate how they're thinking and feeling, to be able to say, like, I feel this way when you do X, Y, and Z. Could you please do it differently? Kind of utilizing some of those strategies, and that helps the communication and the relationships improve. So there's just so many different ways that it can be helpful to adolescents and to families. And, each family is different. So everybody comes in with different things that they're struggling with, different skill sets, different needs. And that's the beautiful thing about working with a professional too, is that they've had that education and training and often have seen a lot of variety and are equipped to be able to help families and teens deal with those things.
I love the population that you're serving too, because I think you're 10 to 25, you're figuring out who you are, how to speak up for yourself, right? Because once you're 10, I have an 11-year-old, she's coming into her own. She's figuring out who she is. She's having waves of confidence up and down, left and right, and then going through puberty. Like, what a pivotal time, and how crucial to teach your kids that I want you to advocate for yourself. I want to normalize that. Just like we go to the doctor for our physical body, we go to a psychologist for our mind. And to help me communicate with my parent that I love throughout this process when my hormones are going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, what a beautiful gift to have an adolescent psychologist. Like, I've had a therapist for my kids in the past, but I feel like, wow, I'm glad we're having this conversation, because as they age, I want them to lean on other adults, not just me. I don't want to have this power struggle where it's like the adolescent psychologist can give me communication tools to come down to their playing field, right? So they have more agency over their life. I just feel like it's such a beautiful age to help them, empower them to focus on their mental health.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I love that. Because really, oftentimes what drives people in to see me, a psychologist, a mental health provider, is that there's something difficult going on, right? There's some sort of struggle, there's some symptoms that are happening, or something bad has happened in their life. And that is what they're seeking support for. But they go in for that, and then they learn a lot of information and develop more skills. They have tools then, and then that they can carry forward with them. And I love that idea of starting, working on these things during the adolescent years when it is really difficult with the family, but then you have those communication tools that you can use through the rest of your life and with all of the relationships that you're in. And I know, we often hear from adults who are struggling with their, parents or other family members as adults, kind of the stuff that happened when they were kids or as they grew up that never got resolved. And so it kind of keeps going on and on. So it's really beautiful to think about some of that getting resolved at a younger age, and then just the possibilities of what that can then be for that family moving forward, how much better their relationships and communication can be through the rest of their life.
Yeah. Never too early to start. And even if you are an adult listening, there's always time for therapy. It's always a good idea. And even if you aren't really, really struggling, having, those routine checkups or someone you do touch base with, so that it's almost like maintenance is important as well.
Yeah. And circling back to what we talked about, noticing our thoughts and those things coming through, that not every thought is true. And that's what a therapist can do. You can kind of say some of the thoughts you've been thinking. And sometimes, we think it's our truth, and it's just not. Like, different thoughts come in for different reasons. We can't always control. And so I think it's the value of a coach, a therapist, someone, third party, to be like, whoa, back up. What did you just say? Because you think like, yeah, I'm bad at that. Or I've been XYZ, fill in the blank that you're hard on yourself. Sometimes you just need someone else to be like, whoa, that's not even true about you. That's not true. What made you think that? Or what, with my kids, it's like the choose again method. Like what would be a better thought that maybe might feel better in your body? What could that be? That practice of understanding that sometimes a third party really can be the awareness that it's hard to cultivate yourself.
Yeah. So if someone listening is like, all right, sold, I'm ready, I need help, I'm gonna sign up for a therapy appointment or get my child a therapy appointment, what steps would you recommend for someone to get started?
That's a great question. It's often a very convoluted and complicated system to navigate. And for somebody who's new to it, it can feel really overwhelming. So I would typically say for a parent or an adolescent, or even an adult, to talk with your regular doctor first, because most people have a primary care physician or a pediatrician that they can speak to. So that's a really great place to start, just to let them know kind of what's going on. Maybe they have a list of resources or referrals that they could provide. The next step I would do is for anybody who has insurance to contact your insurance company. There's a number on the back of your card. Give your insurance company a call and let them know that you need a list of behavioral health providers that are within network. So you can get started there as a way to get services that are covered by your insurance. If you don't have insurance or you don't want to use your insurance, you can also seek help from a provider that in the community that would be self-pay. So there's a lot of therapist directories out there. Psychology Today is a really popular one. There's another directory that is called Open Path Collective, and they are dedicated to providing services that are self-pay at a reduced fee. So between $40 and $70 for a session versus, $150 to $250 is what we would normally pay, depending on where you live in the US and what providers are available. There's a pretty big range. But those directories can be really helpful. There's also times where, people can't get in because there's really long wait lists, or they just can't really afford anything right now. There are some clinics that can provide really low cost services like training clinics. So if you're in a city with a university and they have a psychology program or whatnot, oftentimes trainees provide services as part of their training, and that can be really low cost, like $5 or $10 a session. There's also people who will provide pro bono services. So if you found a provider online that you're interested in, there's no harm in reaching out to that provider to say hey, I really want to get into therapy. I can't afford your rate right now. Do you have a reduced fee? Do you provide pro bono services? Ask a provider those questions, because most mental health providers, especially who are in private practice, will provide those things.
I love it. Thank you for providing language to what to say when you call the insurance company, what to say when you're reaching out to, because I think that is the most overwhelming part is how do I even get this started? Because that's not talked about.
And what are my options? Because there are so many options. Just because you see providers $200 a session doesn't mean I can't do any therapy.
Yeah, it is a barrier though, right? It's a big barrier. It's a barrier for a lot of people that I know when I'm like, get a therapist, what? Get a therapist that'll help you so much. And then I'm just I don't even know where to start. And so I'm so happy we're talking about this. And you can message us. You can message Dr. Brittany Mathews. We also want to let people know how to reach you. But let us know if you have questions, or if you're like, wait, you said BetterHelp. How do I do that? Or what was it? Psychology Today. We'll put links in the show notes. But if people would like to reach out specifically to you because you live this, you breathe this, you've helped thousands of people, you have a great mission behind your business, they're like, no, I want her. I want her now. How do they find you? How do they contact you?
I would direct people to my website. So it's www.mindfindpsychology.com. It's a little bit long. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook as Mindkind. So if people wanted to find me on socials, they can go there as well.
Okay.
I like it. Easy. Mind, kind. Can't forget that one.
Yes. Beautiful. Well, thank you for all this information. We're not done with you yet. We got 3 more segments, but it's just so valuable. I can't tell you enough that the work that you do and us talking about this, I feel like Mental Health Awareness Month should be every month, but also to just celebrate a little bit extra is important, and I love it. So, as you know, we always hit up with 3 gold stars. Your 3 takeaways for our listeners.
So I would say to start small, just start to be more aware of your everyday activities. Anywhere you can that you start to notice something around you or within you, just start to practice your awareness. The second thing I would say is practice that. So if it's something that you want to work on, set an intention to practice it every day, whether that be sitting for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever you can commit to, or identify one of those tasks that you do every day that's kind of mundane and just say, every time I'm doing this, I'm going to practice mindfulness and doing this mindfully. And the third thing that I would note is to pay attention once you start to practice mindfulness and awareness, start to pay attention to how that impacts you, how it impacts your life, and how you might start showing up differently and relating to things differently in your life. Notice the positive impacts that it has.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking of you right now, just being your friend. Something that Dr. Brittany does so well is she's so aware and has created such a mindful practice that if she notices something, she in the moment sends you gratitude. She'll be like, I just noticed, wow, you've really evolved a lot. The way that you just said that, I can see the growth in you. And so it's like these things that I just think if you notice it in the person you love or that you're around, that I can tell you have such a deep practice with this that I'm sure your clients feel it too, that you give them praise in the moment that you notice that progress. It makes me like misty because it's so important. Like you think of a friend, you should tell them, or you notice how great someone is at something, you should say it. And so I just feel like this mindfulness, it creates such gratitude for these tiny little things. Even before we started, she was sending us gratitude, and it was just such a great way to start. And so I just want to send you some gratitude for being so grateful and just
being you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. And that is something that's really important to me because I try to say like any kind of compliment or thing that I notice about people. And I've done that for a long time because one, I think I'm aware that most people are walking around criticizing themselves or feeling not so great. And so it's always nice when you can share something positive with somebody else.
Yes.
And it's something that, it makes me feel good to like make other people feel good. So it's mutually beneficial.
And one other friendship tip she does really well too, and she taught me this way back in the day in college, because we've had a long distance friendship for a long time, is if you think of someone, you shoot them a text, or she'll just say like, hey, thinking of you. And it's like so random. We don't have to talk to each other, but you always tell me when you're thinking of me. And I feel like that's why we've had such a long friendship, that we do that for each other. Like in any moment, something reminds me of her. I like let her know, and vice versa. And so friendship tip, the little gratitude, it helps.
I love having a front row seat to y'all's relationship. So great. Such good role models.
Oh, I love it.
That tees me up perfect for our next segment, Unleashing Ivy, our rapid fire questions. So flipping this, you have a friend who is really struggling, or maybe just anyone in your life. What advice do you have to giving support to that person who is really struggling with their mental health? What would you say?
Good question.
Yeah, I would say don't hesitate to talk to them. I think sometimes people get a little nervous about approaching these topics, or like can see that somebody's struggling but don't know what to say. And so they don't say anything at all. And I would just say, don't hesitate, let that person know. And it can be something super simple, like, you haven't seemed quite like yourself lately. Is something going on? Do you want to talk about it? It can just be super basic, but very direct. And it gives that person an opportunity to open up. So open up that conversation and, try to be a great listener, listen to what they've got to say and validate what they're going through, letting them know that they have It's understandable why they feel that way, and ask them what they need for support. So sometimes too, we jump in and we think that we know how to support somebody, or that what we think that they know what, they need. But it's really important to ask people, like, how do you want to be supported? Or how can I support you as you're going through this? And let them tell you what to do.
That's great.
Not trying to fix. I think we're in such a society of, you tell me your problems, I fix it because I'm uncomfortable with you having problems, because you're telling me your problems is making me uncomfortable. And so that holding space and allowing them to have their own journey, thinking, okay, if I fix it, I'm robbing them of them figuring it out. And that's tough.
Yes. Yeah.
It's good advice.
All right. My question is, recently you lived on the other side of the world. You lived in Japan for a while and created some self-care techniques over there that really, I was admiring you from across the world, thinking like, how is she doing this? She took 2 little kids, basically single parenting because your husband was working so hard over there, and you made it happen. And so I want you to talk through like how you prioritize your self-care techniques, what they were with these little kids across the world.
Yeah. Great question. It was a very challenging experience, and it was a beautiful opportunity, and ultimately was an amazing experience. But it was really challenging because we were on our own in a different part of the world, and it was just the 4 of us, and my husband was working a lot. And so it was me with my kids the majority of the time. And so what I prioritize is trying to get up earlier than them, to have some quiet time and alone time for myself, and started my day with yoga practice, typically 20 to 30 minutes. And then following that with some meditation. I also take a lot of inspiration from books. So I would typically try to read even just a couple pages from a book that I was reading at that time, learning more about yoga or meditation or something that was inspiring to me, and journaling, finding a way to write out what I was feeling, or, writing my goals for the day, whatever it may be, just utilizing some time to journal. So those were my morning practices that I would utilize. And then throughout the day, we had stressful moments, and really tried to bring my mindfulness practice into those moments, focusing on my breath, taking deep breaths whenever I needed to, and remembering to kind of slow down. So those were really big. Those are what kind of got me through. And I would say the other piece is connection. That obviously we know connection is important, but that's something I really learned when I moved across the world with my family and didn't know anybody, is how important connection is to me. So it was super important for me to stay connected with some of my people back here. Andrea, we ended up scheduling time every week to be able to connect, and forming new friendships, and making connections in our community in Japan was really important. And sometimes that wasn't always the easiest thing for me, because I have always tended to be more shy or a little bit socially anxious. And so it really forced me to like put myself out there and introduce myself to people, and just talk to people I didn't know and make friends. And that was a really important lesson that I learned, and something that helped sustain me.
Yeah. And I think it just shows that you can do it anywhere, in any environment. I mean, that is so tricky. You're in a place where no one's speaking your language. I mean, you found the people that spoke your language a bit, but you were even learning a new language with toddlers, trying to find schooling, basically a single parent. I mean, if you can do it, anybody can do it. Back here in America, we can take 5 minutes.
Well, it's also showing like you're honoring the things that make you feel good. You're prioritizing those things. You're making them, and you're making you a non-negotiable, so that you do have the space and the patience for your kiddos, for your hubby. It all comes back to you understanding and believing that that time that you're taking is important, and it needs to be on that to-do list.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a great point. I think sometimes people get into this mindset of feeling like self-care is like selfish, or if you're taking time for yourself, it's selfish. And for me, I knew that if I was going to show up every day and be the best parent that I could be, I had to do that in the morning, to take care of myself, to center myself, to replenish myself so that I could sustain through the rest of the day in caring for my little ones in a foreign country. And it really is, when you have these practices, this mindfulness practice or meditation practice, self-care practices, they help fill you up so that you can show up better in the world and be at your best. And that positively impacts everybody around you.
Totally. Beautifully said. Okay, last question. If you could go back and tell younger Britt one thing, what age would you choose and what would you tell her?
Man, that's a great question. I feel like I would probably go back to that adolescent period. During early puberty, early start of adolescence, there is this developmental shift where most adolescents will begin to feel like everybody is looking at them and everybody is thinking about them. And I definitely experienced that significantly and was very concerned about, how I was perceived or being judged by others, and tended to withdraw a bit, go into myself. And I would probably go back to that point and say, like, nobody's looking at you. Nobody's judging you. Everybody's in their own head. Like, just do what you want to do and be the best person you can be and do what makes you happy. And don't kind of dim that light.
That's great advice.
And even for anyone listening now, right? Like 28-year-old me is like, yeah, everyone around me is in their own head worrying about themselves. Yeah. Think about like workout classes. No one's looking at you. I promise.
Right. Yeah.
That's a big one. Well, thank you so much for your time again. We could just have you every episode just to keep diving into mental health because it's so important. Can't say it enough. And you're living it, right? You're living and breathing these practices that you're helping these adolescents weave into their life at such a pivotal age. So I'm just so happy you chose that population because they need you. And I'm thinking of my kids now and just how I can weave these things in. It's just so valuable. I'm so happy. You're my friend. You exist, that you took your passion and that you created this business. I'm so excited to see where it goes and how many people you help. So thank you for being here and being you.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you, Brooke. Thank you both for having me. It's been such a pleasure to talk with you.
You're the best. So grateful for you both. Okay, we leave our listeners with a piece of gold, as you know, a quote that speaks to you. Would you please share yours?
Yes. I have a quote by Thich Nhat Hanh from his book, Peace is Every Step. We can smile, breathe, walk, and eat our meals in a way that allows us to be in touch with the abundance of happiness that is available. We are very good at preparing to live, but not very good at living. We know how to sacrifice 10 years for a diploma, and we are willing to work very hard to get a job, a car, a house, and so on. But we have difficulty remembering that we are alive in the present moment, the only moment there is for us to be alive. Every breath we take, every step we make, we can be filled with peace, joy, and serenity. We need only to be awake, alive in the present moment.
This is Gold Ivy signing off.
Listen to your truth and go chase your gold. Oh, I love that quote.
That was so zen.
That was.